Hey there YouTube, I'm Yukitsu, this is the Yukitsu Times, welcome to my channel. Welcome back to Shogun 2 Total War. As you can see, I've started off my little demonstration about how to use sort of a more naginata themed army. For that I've switched up my retainers a little bit. I've now got the practice grounds and the Mikoshi portable shrine, that's a new one that you haven't seen before, and the untrained Fugu cook. The Mikoshi portable shrine makes it so that you've got a +2 melee attack for all monk units. This includes mounted naginata monks. So as you can see, my cavalry component consists of these 2 naginata warrior monk cavalry, including 1 veteran one. And this has pushed their melee attack up to 17, which is ridiculously good for a 1000 koku unit that is also good against cavalry. Now the benefit of this unit is that it's almost as good as this katana cavalry against an infantry unit, if I just let it get stuck in there and fight its way through. And in some ways it's better because their melee defense is 11, which is really, really high. Now, of course, they're lacking the armor, but that's sort of a general theme of this army in general, so that's something I'm going to have to watch out for. Now, as you can see, my lead corps is Naginata Samurai, but I've also got these Naginata Warrior Monks who have a much higher attack value, partly in thanks to that Mikoshi Portable Shrine, but they also have a special ability called War Cry, and I'll just bring these profiles up. And this slows down enemies, it affects their defense, and if I recall, it reduces the morale as well. It says it heavily demoralizes them. Not sure if that's mechanical, but I'm pretty sure it is. So these guys are going to hang around the flanks and just use that War Cry ability. That's primarily what they're for, so that I fold up those flanks. The Naginata Samurai are there to hold the center, and I've got this excellent cavalry that can provide extra punch where I need it. And I'm also pretty confident that with that combination of the Mikoshi Portable Shrine, the practice grounds, and this extra Yari cavalry, that I'll be able to punch through enemy cavalry unless they've gone really heavy on it. And even if I can't, my units are so well protected because I've got so many Naginatas. And like I was saying, the weakness of these sort of units, the Naginata Samurai in particular, is matchlock units. And to sort of counter that, I've got this one unit of Bow Samurai, which isn't really enough, I feel. But I would really, really like, I really need to unlock those Bow Warrior Monks before I can really fix that problem. So that's where I'm heading off next to, assuming I can cross the water here. Now, the last thing I've added are the 2 units of Matchlocks. And the reason I took Matchlock Warrior Monks this time is that they have an extended range ability. And what this lets me do is it lets me set up just outside of gun range and hit the button and my guys will open fire on the enemy Matchlocks. And if my opponent hasn't taken his own Matchlock Warrior Monks, this will give me the advantage I need to win the gunfight, force him forward, and to pretend that I, had more bows. It's sort of a replacement in between for having bows. The problem will be if my opponent himself has taken a lot of bows, in which case my guns will be less than useless. Now then, let's head on in here. Once again, this is not necessarily a set-in-stone army. We'll have to see if I end up taking it, or if terrain... Oops. Stop shirts. Turn off that because for demonstration purposes. But we'll have to see if the map is allowing for this sort of army composition, or if I'll have to change some stuff. You never know. The reason I'm not allowing mixed avatars is that the composition really changes, and the theory behind it really changes when you allow mixed avatars. So that's the only reason I'm doing that. Looks like I got a match here, or it's just this little circle spinning here usually tells you when you've got a match. It usually stops, but apparently something happened. Okay, now we've got an opponent. He's a 4-star bronze general named Doppelganger. Let's see what he's up to. Koshinetsu Ridge, journeyman bowman. He's a leader and he's a swordsman. Okay, I'm going to ditch the Matchlock Warrior Monks, and I'm going to take an extra unit of Bow Samurai, and that's just a consideration for the sort of level that we're going into. I kind of get the feeling that this ridge is going to really not reward taking a lot of matchlock units. I'm not actually even really sure that's going to reward taking very many bows, so what I'm going to do is take one of each. I'd kind of like to bulk up my infantry just a little bit here, but don't have quite enough money for that. Let's get rid of these guys and downgrade you to Ashigaru. And then I can take 2 screening units of those guys. So This is going to be my composition for this one. Let's see if this works here. The reason I don't, I actually can't remember what this one is the problem. But ridge maps, guns tend to be slightly less useful if you're fighting from over the lip of the ridge, just because you can sort of hide behind the ridge a little bit. And that way they don't get line of fire, they just sort of sit there uselessly. And bows similarly, just because of the way it's made, you tend to find both armies are rushing very quickly for the peak, and once you get it, you charge using the downhill bonus. So there's rarely as much of a reason to take bows as there is on some other maps, unless you're sure that you can dominate the ridge, in which case, you know, raining down arrows from that is a very strong idea. Let's get on into this match and see what's going on. I checked they were technically ready, so I should hopefully be able to get into this match. Yeah, looks like they're ready to go. Now, the problem for me here is that I don't really have very many I don't have any veteran naginatas, in fact. So I don't have the option to sort of force my way through my opponent using the higher quality units. I have to rely on these vanilla ones with stronger support units, and that could be a problem. Yeah, that could be a problem. I'm thinking just if I can get around that just with those units as they are. But the reality is, since they're not veteran, I'm going to have to use my support units a little bit better. Veteran naginatas are just nearly unkillable. If they don't get good gunshots against them, you're just typically not going to see any sort of returns. Now, if I can get the ridge and get my guns into a good firing position, things should go well for me. But in all odds, he's going to try and counter-rush the top of the ridge, so I'm probably not going to get off very many shots. Now, I'm near the archery dojo, he's near the armor dojo. I really kind of want to deny him the armor dojo, and I don't have enough shooting to make it worthwhile to go for the archery one. So I'm going to set up my units right over here and try and take him out on the archery or on the armory one right away. Now the way I'm doing this, I want a strong center of Naginata Samurai, and I want my Naginata Warrior Monks kind of a little bit further behind and on the wings. The reason I want to do that is if I can get a sort of flank attack with them, they're basically going to cause huge morale penalties once they pop that war cry, to the point where I'm not sure if my opponent will be able to, you know, take that. Hopefully he won't. Let's get our cavalry sort of along the left here, and let's use one of our sword attendants over here to try and capture that archery dojo just in case my opponent camps. We're going to use this other one with our main army. It's going to be sort of a screen. There we go. Oops. Okay, well, that was the wrong button. There we go. And you guys. So, not necessarily happy with the amount of cavalry I have, but they're very veteran. They've got some good upgrades, so we'll have to see how that works out for me. So we're just going to rush up towards this hill here. Looks like my opponent has got 4 units of cav. Light cav though, so I'm not too worried about that. Yari Sams on the 4. Yari cav on the left. So his heavy cav component is to the left side, which means I'm going to have to run my cav over to that side as well. Now, thanks to the fact that I've got a lot of Naginatas, I don't have to worry too much about things like flank charges or anything like that. What he's going to probably be able to do, though, is sort of ram into my matchlocks from the front, hopefully cause some damage and then back off before my units can retaliate. But in any event, I need to rush over here to try and make sure he doesn't capture that dojo. He's going to be able to control it, but I can sort of try and, you know, threaten him while he's on it. I can't engage his cavalry directly because my cavalry will lose. He does outnumber them by a sufficient amount, even though I've got probably the superior quality to his cavalry. Of course, he's getting a little bit close to the light cavalry, but that's probably just a trap, so I'm not going to let him bait me into there. Okay, well, my guy's just about working on that useless archery dojo that I don't care about. But let's continue on up here. At the very least, this will put me in a strong position, I think. So he's lined up all his cavalry along that flank there. That'll be fine. I suspect Yari-Sam.
Our hidden units have been discovered, my lord.
Let's see here. Yeah, he's really going for that. Yeah, he's using those light cavalry very effectively. He hasn't drawn them back properly, however. Okay, so his bowgen's firing away. Okay, I don't want to pursue here, because honestly, it's gonna end poorly if I do. My opponent's plugging away with a bow general, but like I said, bow general is not necessarily the most effective means of causing a lot of casualties. Oops, shoot, I need to back off here. Let's get these guys over here, just distraction. Okay, and he's moving his cavalry down here to do whatever, I'm not really sure what, but that's a huge mistake. That's going to give me the downhill charge with my cavalry.
Our general is in grave danger, my lord.
So my cav got the downhill charge, so they should be at an advantage here. He's flagging a bit there. Let's do that. Let's do that and this. So my leadership general is now a full-on leadership general instead of a part leadership general. And that's because I've hit that level where I can take the ability stand and fight. So I've switched it out to that. Let's aim at his general here. So his cavalry, I've completely wiped my way through them. I've cleaned through on his right flank pretty easily. I've basically just lost sacrificial units at this point in time. Oh wait, he got some cavalry through there. I wasn't paying enough attention. But it's not really going to matter, because this is no longer a hammer and anvil strike. This is just a hammer strike from behind. Wasn't paying attention, he ran away with some of his cavalry, so they lived. That's what I get for not paying attention. Anyway, his cav's going to get cleaned up nicely by my cav running back in. And that's pretty much going to be game here. So that was a very much faster moving game than I really would have liked given my army composition, but it worked out pretty well all in all. Basically, he couldn't hammer his way through my units at all. So that let me wrap up on the flanks where I wanted to do that decisive blow. And that's one of those things that's important about this style of army, is you need something that can do something decisive. And in my case, that was the really ridiculously powerful Naginata warrior monks. They're very expensive and they're very fragile, but if I get the war cry off against units that are sort of on the verge of breaking, they'll clear out those flanks like no problem. Even if it were something like a Katana Samurai instead of what my opponent had, which was Yari Samurai, which are pretty much useless, they would have pretty much torn through them. They're a really good unit. Especially with the Mikoshi Portable Shrine. Anyway, let's check the results screen. Closer and closer to 6-star. And this is just a useless retainer that I'm never going to use, really. It's 5 ammunition. Oh, I got a new helmet. But yeah, I just needed this to get closer to that place that I wanted to go, see if I could cross without doing a naval battle. If I do have to do a naval battle, I might show you guys that. They're not really my thing in this era. Veteran Naginata Warrior Monk Cavalry, those guys are always useful. I'll take another one of them. Let's just check our unit statistics to round that off here. So, as you can sort of see, the Naginata Samurai weren't getting a huge number of kills. They were doing decently. But, like, compared to these Naginata Warrior Monks, these Naginata Warrior Monks were getting huge numbers of kills. Naginata Warrior Monk Cav, they did fairly well, actually. I thought more of them would have died. But they were highly upgraded with those abilities. My Yari Cavalry got a few more kills, but they were close to that even trade that I always talk about. bow samurai, they were there just in case my opponent took a specific army composition and I needed them. And the matchlocks basically were sort of a throwaway unit. The reason being that there weren't really many great angles to get on that map. The only reason I took them is in case my opponent was taking a full-on sort of rush-down build, in which case I would have had to have tried to kite him backwards down the mountain and let him control both of the objectives up until I had wiped out enough of his army that I could counterattack. But that's pretty much the only reason I took them. 2 sword attendants, one of them 56 kills on a sword. Oh, but they almost got completely killed. Okay, so that makes sense. They must have done something relatively well. I think they were charging into Yari Samurai, if I recall correctly. But anyway, my opponent, 4 units of Yari Samurai. Don't take these guys. They're just not versatile enough to make the cut, really. Katana Samurai, he's taken 3 units of them. With all of the routing units of Yari Samurai, I suspect these guys ran faster than they normally should have. I think it's mostly because of the morale effect of the Yari Samurai running away. And these guys did pretty poorly for Katana Samurai. Like, my Naginata Samurai did considerably better, and these Katana Samurai should have done just fine against them. Yari Cavalry, on average, sort of that even trade. This one got half as many kills as it did losses. That's really bad. I'm not sure what happened there. Light Cav, these guys managed to get into my guns. Honestly, I don't really care. And his matchlock Ashigaru, just like mine, were pretty much useless. They were sort of a throwaway token unit that you take on this map. But anyway, let's go back to the army select screen. Actually, let's check to see if I can cross here. Son of a bitch. Okay, well, looks like I'm going to have to do this the long way. But anyway, that'll be for another episode. Let's go in here. Anyway, just looking at my army, I can sort of tell you some more things. If you don't want to take Naginata Warrior Monks, for example, the way you do that is instead of taking Naginata Warrior Monks as a decisive supporting unit, you take another one of these Naginata Samurai, for example. And what you can do is you can take these Nodachi Samurai, and they make a great sort of alternative to the Naginata Warrior Monks, in that if you get a really clean charge off on the flanks, you'll usually fold them in from the sides as well. That's another way to do that same sort of thing. Another alternative is taking these Katana Cavalry, and the reason for that is, again, these guys are excellent at smashing through melee units. The risk there is that if your opponent took, for example, my opponent took, and a lot of spears, these guys aren't necessarily going to be all that effective because they'll be trying to smash through spears units. And that's probably not going to let you turn the flank all that efficiently. Although if that is the case, then your Naginata Samurai will probably be better off. They can still get overwhelmed, and since they can't get that flank charge, they can't really do the decisive blow, that's not going to work out well in your favor necessarily. Now, another way you can do it is you can take Great Guard Cavalry. That's the one that I like to do if I have to do this. The reason for that is they've got a much higher charge bonus, and they've got plenty of armor as well. So what they can do as compared to these Katana Cavalry is they can charge in even if it's spears and then leave. They just do that over and over and over again as best your micro can allow until your opponent is completely shattered and you've won. Now, there are a lot of sort of different ways that you can also support these guys by just sort of going for a grinding fight instead of the decisive destroy your enemy and fold them in from the flank style. You could take Katana Samurai to support them, but the way you do that is you stretch your Katana Samurai out sort of thin in front of your Naginata Samurai. You get the charge bonus and you have them stuck in there, and you follow up with the Naginata Samurai, and what happens is that the combination of the two will outlast your opponent most of the time, and that's sort of a very strong way to grind through an enemy and eventually kill them. But that's sort of a battle of attrition, and you should generally try to avoid those. It's also the simplest way to get into a fight, though. So if you feel that your opponent is more skilled than you, and that's what you sort of feel that you can manage while managing everything else, for example, keeping your cavalry alive, keeping his cavalry off your back, then that's what you'll have to do. And of course, lastly, you could always just go for the brute force method, which is kill everyone on the flanks through sheer force, and that would be something like the warrior nuns or a hero unit, or like the Nodachi method is something similar to that. But basically, a unit that's so strong at melee that they just tear straight through that flank and then let you fold them in from the sides. And those are sort of the different ways to do it. And the big theme of this is Naginata Samurai hold the enemy in place, while something else collapses in from the enemy's behind, like cavalry, or they destroy the enemy flanks so that they can turn in onto the enemies that are clumped up in the center fighting the naginata samurai. Those are sort of the different ways that you use naginatas effectively, in my opinion. Now, they're not necessarily my favorite unit because they lack some of that decisive edge that sword units do, but they're a very reliable unit. They're going to last a long time no matter what they're fighting. They've got excellent morale, melee, defense, and armor. So what you take them, the sort of player that you should be when you take them is the very sort of cautious player, sort of more reserved player that's still able to move into melee without having to rely heavily on your opponent charging into you. Typically they will, but you still need to worry about the fact that you'll notice I don't have a lot of shooting in this army composition. That's because these naginata samurai are so expensive. And I typically need more naginata units than I need sword units. You'll notice in my sword army, I had 4 sword units. And in this composition, I had 5 naginata units, and they all cost more. So the reason for that is the naginata units are covering for multiple roles. I don't have any spears in this army. So what they're doing is covering themselves in the back against cavalry charges, as what happened. I didn't care one whit if you charged me in the back with that particular army composition. So that's what you need to do, is take them in the same numbers as you would take the spears and swords combined for another army. And what that leaves you with is just everything has to support that idea. Get around behind them, get around their sides, and hold them in place with the naginata samurai. That's pretty much the lesson that you get with them. And as much as I like Matchlock Ashigaru, I don't think it works necessarily well with this army composition type, just because they're not designed for that sort of purpose necessarily. They're more designed for that brunt head-on assault first, and then they can sort of move around the flanks to pick at things, but they're not decisive in the latter part of the game. On the other hand, cavalry is, so they're an excellent pairing for these guys, and it's usually the tougher cavalry that can stick in a fight and last it out, as compared to the Yari cavalry. Anyway, I hope you found this video informative, and I hope to see you all next time, where we'll be talking about a spear-themed army. And no, that does not mean Yari Samurai, that means Yari Ashigaru. Anyway, I'll see you next time.